Welcome to another edition of Global Conversations with Regis Tremblay, coming to you from beautiful and historic Yalta in the Crimea of the Russian Federation. Yalta is a vibrant city that energizes and inspires all who live and come here. Young and old relish this historic and beautiful place located between majestic mountains and the Black Sea. Welcome to another edition of Global Conversations. My guest tonight is a regular on the show, Vladimir Kozin. He's a longtime Russian diplomat and a special advisor to the Russian administration on all things nuclear, treaties, nuclear weaponry, etc. Vladimir, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Regis.
So, Vladimir, in the last couple of weeks, we have seemingly moved back from what could have been World War III.
Mm-hmm.
It did not look good from here. It looked like US, NATO were prompting the Ukraine and President Zelensky to make some very threatening remarks about taking back the Donbass and Crimea by force.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here are some topics I want to cover with you tonight, because I do not think the problem has gone away. Recently, the EU Parliament issued an anti-Russian resolution and sanctions. What are your comments on that action from the EU?
Mm-hmm. Well, we think that the European Union resolutions and adoption of extra sanctions against the Russian Federation is an illegal act. It runs counter to the international legal standards and has nothing to do with the reality. Why? As it is known that these resolutions and sanctions have been imposed against us due to two major factors. First of all, Mr. Navalny's case. And second, Russian military exercises not far away from Ukraine in the Russian Crimea and in the Russian mainland territory. As to Mr. Navalny, we have already explained that he was accused of fraud and money laundering. And the Moscow court charged Mr. Navalny, suspended sentence to jail him for violating of terms of his probation. And we do not understand, and we cannot understand why foreign countries, some foreign countries in the European Union and in NATO are defending a person who has been accused of fraud and money laundering. And he was convicted by the open court. And many diplomats from the European Union accredited in Moscow have attended these court trials. They have not been classified. They have been open for general public. And Mr. Navalny is now in prison. So just imagine if the Russian Federation would point its finger to any person convicted and accused of fraud and money laundering and embezzlement of funds, and raise hue and cry and demand from any foreign country to release immediately a person for such a violation of criminal code. Nobody will do that. So why should we release Mr. Navalny as he is a criminal convicted by the open court decision? And I have not seen any appeal from Mr. Navalny to this court verdict?
Yeah, well,
Again and again, just a second, Regis, and one more thing. There have been another court in Moscow where Mr. Navalny accused the Second World War veteran, ex-military officer, and painted him black, and his decorations, medals, and orders he has been conferred during the wartime against Nazi Germany. And why Mr. Navalny should be released from prison because someone in the West wanted his release. No, he will stay behind the bars the longer the court decided. As to the military exercises of the Russian Federation, well, first of all, it's our land. We never crossed Russian territory. We never conducted such exercises outside the Russian land masses. And if you can consider and compare figures of how many troops and how many military hardware have been used, have been employed during Russian, by the way, already pre-planned exercises, you will see that the comparison will be in the favor of Defender Europe, NATO exercises. If Defender Europe 2021. Our military exercises are over. By the 1st of May, they have came back to the garrisons and bases, military installations. But Defender Europe 2021 will last several months already, from now till autumn this year. And in the Russian exercises, we used 10,000 troops. In Defender Europe 2021, NATO countries will use 40,000 troops, soldiers and officers. We used, during the exercises we're talking about, 1,200 military hardware, tanks, armored personnel carriers, artillery pieces, etc. In Defender Europe 2021, NATO countries will use 15,000 of hardware equipment. So 12 times as much as we have used. And by the way, our exercises have been of defensive nature, while Defender Europe 2021, it's an offensive exercise, and it will last several months already. And during that exercise, Defender Europe 2021, NATO countries, including the United States and France and the United Kingdom, they will use mock nuclear devices to test the employment and command and control chain. So, Regis?
well, thank you for that, Vladimir. And what we're trying to do is counter the US NATO narrative that it has been and is Russia the aggressor. And it is obvious, if anyone is objective and are paying attention to what you just shared, what I've shared many times, that this Operation Defender Europe 2021, coupled with Kiev's threats and actions to take back the Donbass and the Crimea, have really been acts of war, declaration of war against the Russian Federation. So I want to ask you again to talk about some other topics that the US, and it's basically the US that has reframed this entire argument. Now, the US Congress was increasing sanctions and hostile rhetoric about Russia again.
Mhm.
Russophobia is rampant in the United States like it's never been before. It did not go away with the election of Biden.
Mhm.
And Vladimir, I want your comment on this particular point. The Russian and Chinese diplomats, President Putin and President Xi, have pleaded with the Biden administration on more than one occasion to sit down and talk to de-escalate and stabilize this very dangerous international situation. Your comment on those facts.
Mhm. Well, thank you very much for your remarks and for your question, Regis. Look, you are absolutely right. Beijing and Moscow tried several times to persuade the American elite, and namely the incumbent US President, Mr. Joseph Biden, to sit together on bilateral basis separately and to talk about all these issues dealing with strategic stability, arms control, and restoring our relationship from the new page, just bypassing all negative things we have already accumulated by today, by now, and to start from upfolio, from clean page, to nullify our steps forward, steps back, to and fro, actions and counteractions, etc. We have already stockpiled a lot of these actions and counteractions versus each other. Unfortunately, though Mr. Joseph Biden suggested this kind of summit between him and his Russian counterpart, President Putin, but still we do not have specific details of what does it mean to talk about strategic stability. What kind of specific items this paragraph will entail? If Mr. Joseph Biden is in favor of opening a new page on arms control and disarmament, okay, let's specify. But we are sure, even today, that Mr. Joseph Biden doesn't want to talk about missile defense system, global missile defense system of the United States of America and that of its NATO allies. But without talking on missile defense and specific measures to arrange a mutually beneficial solution, for example, not to emplace missile defense system assets very close to the opposite number territory, and some others, like limiting the number of anti-ballistic missiles we have done before during the ABM Treaty of 1972, unfortunately withdrawn unilaterally by the previous US administration. That it is also a very important issue to be tackled and debated and mutually nice and fair solution should be arrived at. No response so far. Only the talk is about the potential venue of such talks, of such summit, US-Russian summit at the level of presidents, and general agenda consisting of only just a cluster of issues, though very important, though very necessary to be debated in general terms, but not with details, with the specific paragraph by paragraph, because we have already met during the predecessor of Mr. Joseph Biden with Donald Trump in Helsinki, between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin in Helsinki in 2018. They also just debated all these issues, but in general term, and instructed the respective delegations and experts to continue to debate these issues. So, but where we are at the same zero option. There is no desire to move step by step, mutually and bilaterally to each other's direction on the basis of compromise. Without the compromise, all these thorny and delicate issues like strategic stability and arms control cannot be resolved. They will be still in cul-de-sac, in deadlocked position. Regis?
Yeah, well, you brought up the meeting of Donald Trump and President Putin in Helsinki in 2018. I want to make a few comments about that, and I'm going to connect that with the disastrous meeting of the United States and China in Anchorage, Alaska, that ended up being a United States dressing down of China for human rights violations. It was never intended by the United States to be a discussion on critical issues. And from the Russian perspective, or from anybody who is objective and paid attention, Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin obviously had a very constructive meeting in Helsinki. Anybody who watched the press conference afterwards, Trump was overwhelmingly positive and excited about the progress that had been made. And President Putin actually affirmed all of that, not in such glowing terms, but very objectively in his very measured way. As soon as those words were uttered by Trump, his entire political party stabbed him in the back, starting with Lindsey Graham, John McCain, many members of Congress. They called him Putin's poodle. So it was obvious that the intention of, as you say, the United States elites, those people who really do form United States foreign policy, did not approve of what Trump did and said, and really did everything to discredit him. When you put those two instances together, what happened right after Helsinki and what happened in Anchorage, Alaska, any objective, normal person would say, why would Russia and China trust Joe Biden now saying, let's meet, without, as you described, Vladimir, a very specific list of critical, world destabilizing issues. And it's not only about arms control, it's about weapons in space, and it's about this very serious threat to World War III that the United States has orchestrated in the Ukraine against Donbass, and obviously that's against Russia. So I really think it's important that we bring that out and that we counter the lies and the narrative coming from the United States. Now I have another topic I want you to comment on, because I want to bring it back to the closest we've come, in my opinion, to World War III was the last 2 months of US, NATO provoking Ukraine, Zelensky, to attack and take back Donbass and the Crimea. President Putin and your defense minister Shoigu made it very clear in televised comments that if you attack Ukraine. If you attack, you will cease to exist. Am I misinterpreting that message, Vladimir?
Well, it's naturally it's a very strong warning, and it is well grounded, because in the recent years we have seen, unfortunately, the vast activity of the United States Armed Forces in Europe and in Asia Pacific, or in the Indo-Pacific area as well, a wider area than Asia Pacific, and in Northern Pole, in Arctica, and in the Persian Gulf, in the Black Sea, in the Mediterranean, in the Atlantic Ocean, almost everywhere. So all American military bases, more than 800 of them, smaller or larger, are on a high readiness alert. And we are still having, during President Biden's presidency, the continuation of regular strategic offensive arms, strategic offensive nuclear arms triad, very active, both ICBMs, land-based on the United States territory, then nuclear-powered submarines, both ballistic missiles and SSNs, attack submarines, and heavy strategic bombers. For example, they have not ceased regular patrol operations in the sky of Europe, very close to our territory and to the territory of the Republic of Belarus, our ally. So conventional forces, naval exercises, land-based forces, non-nuclear or dual-capable aircraft air exercises are still going on day in, day out, especially in the Baltic Sea area. All airfields located in Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, Zokniai, then Lielvarde and Emery, respectively, are using capable aircraft of some NATO member states. Dual capable aircraft means that they can carry conventional weapons in the form of air rockets and airdrop bombs, and nuclear weapons, tactical weapons as well. And they are on a routine patrol flights, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, etc., etc. They're very close to our territory, to the Russian exclave, the Kaliningrad Oblast, or the Kaliningrad region, Oblast in Russian region. So nearly 50% of all exercises NATO is conducting annually, very close to our territory, has anti-Russian, anti-Belarusian characteristics, features. But we cannot sit idle and close our eyes and close our ears. Not only our military men are watching with great concern, but civilians. I'm not a military man, though I have graduated from Reserved Officers Training Corps at the Institute, and having military educational insignia like military interpreter, from Russian into English, from English into Russian, English language interpreter. But I have never served in the Soviet or Russian armed forces at all, because I have been working to the Russian Foreign Ministry and was relieved of of this military duties of myself. But being a civilian, due to this fact, I also notice a lot of movements, a lot of preparations we consider both at the highest military political level in my country and to my wife and to my kids, that those preparations remind us the preparations for the Third World War. The preparations when Adolf Hitler had done before he launched Operation Barbarossa against the Soviet Union on June 22nd, 1941, amassing 270 divisions of many, many kinds, tank, rifle divisions, motorized, etc., etc. So, and this war fighting machine of NATO is gradually moving very closer to the Russian and Belarusian borders, like many decades ago in 1941. But having already experienced a lot of wars and a lot of invaders who wanted to conquer Russia or to steal a part of its territory, to conquer a part of its territory, there were too many wars in the Far East, in the Eastern Front, south, and even up north in Arkhangelsk. So we have to be vigilant, and we have to be prepared for extraordinary situations, for something unexpected to us. That's why we also pay just a lot of money. It's not a secret on our armed forces and for creating new types of weapons, the most sophisticated, based on high-tech developments, etc. We cannot just pretend that nothing is happening, business as usual. No, the business will not be usual as before. Unfortunately, we have already tested this kind of thing, but we arrived at the conclusion that such attitude from us, nobody appreciated very much. It was regarded as the Soviet Union weakness, or weakness of the Russian Federation after the demise of the USSR in 1991. But we, as Americans, we are a practical-minded people. We do not want any kind of war, limited or an all-out war, be it conventional, non-nuclear, or nuclear. We do not want this kind of thing completely. No, no, нет и еще раз нет. No, and one more, нет, no. But we would like to live in an environment friendly, stable, do not interfering in each other domestic affairs, and to live as it has been said at in the UN Charter, United Nations Organization Charter, and to avoid wars that several times has swept many countries on our planet and destroyed many cities, villages, infrastructure, and killed many, many people. So, but to do this, there should be very frank and precise debates at any level, between us, between you and me, between academic community of our countries, between parliamentarians, between NATO and the Russian Federation, between inside of the OSCE, Organization on Security and Cooperation in Europe, with the European Union representatives, etc. But the method of intimidating us through sanctions, through popping up Navalny's case as a criminal persons convicted by court rulings, and some other things like amassing troops contingents on a large scale very close to our shores and to our territory, it will be fertile. It will bring us to a dead end, to the same Cold War 2.0 or Cold 3.0, qualitatively much dangerous and much unhappy, very tragic. So do we deserve this kind of thing? No, nobody deserves this kind of gloomy and risky scenario. I don't know what will happen in the reality, because there is a controversy between President Joseph Biden, who said in several months' time this proposed summit will be held. State Secretary Antony Blinken said in several weeks. Let's keep our fingers crossed and hope for the best. But we need practical solutions. Blah, blah, or nice words packed in a diplomatic, nice phrases and sentences in joint declarations, that's not what we would like to have. Concrete realities improving our relationship, because really nuclear Armageddon, non-nuclear Armageddon is hanging over our heads, unfortunately. But we do not want this kind of strategy, because to my mind, I don't like to pretend to be a Greek Cassandra who predicted negative scenarios, very gloomy, very dangerous, extremely upset. But I would like to tell you and share your concerns and concerns of many other experts and politicians, that the chances of unleashing the Third World War are very close. And recently, such chances have become more real than during previous years or even months. Regis?
Well, it seems to me, Vladimir, that Russia, the Russian Federation, in the words of President Putin and Defense Minister Shoigu and others high up in the government, have decided and have made it clear that it is not going to be business as usual, which you alluded to. And President Putin has made a couple of statements in terms of Ukraine attempting to attack Donbass and Crimea. I repeat, he said, if you attack, you will cease to exist. Russia could do away with Ukraine. Some people think in a matter of weeks. I think it'd be a matter of hours. There's such an overwhelming advantage that Russia has militarily, technology, and everything else. But the second thing, Vladimir, in this past week, I saw 2 televised demonstrations of Russia's military preparedness, and it was showing and emphasizing these hypersonic missiles that Russia has. It showed them being tested, and I'm convinced that the message of President Putin and Shoigu recently, Putin way back in January, it revealed to the world and to the Russian parliament the existence and the operational capability of the hypersonic missiles.
Mm-hmm.
I believe this was a very strong message to the United States of America and those who are controlling foreign policy that life now is going to be different. We're not playing this game anymore. Now, I want to move on to the final point, which is connected to everything we've just been talking about.
Mm-hmm.
In the last few weeks, the United States has continued to tell Russia, you have to take away your diplomats. We don't want these diplomats here in this country. And I forget what number it was, a dozen or more.
Mm-hmm.
And then Russia immediately responded with a tit-for-tat expulsion of US diplomats.
Mm-hmm.
Russia also responded by making it illegal for Russian citizens to work in US embassies and consulates in Russia.
Mm-hmm.
And Russia was throwing out, I don't know how many NGOs who were funded by United States and Western money. This is a very powerful response, in my opinion. And it seems that it's even more dangerous now than before. So how can one conceptualize and frame Joe Biden's intention to have a summit with Russia and or China when we get these mixed messages of more sanctions, more military threats, and now this tit-for-tat expulsion of diplomats? Are these not serious threats of war, Vladimir?
Look, in the Russian language, we have a saying, folk saying, the policy of knuta и пряника. In English language, it's not the same, like knut, whip, pryanik, like biscuits, etc. But in English, there is another very similar folk saying, carrot and stick. Carrot and stick. So current US administration has subscribed to carrot and stick policy versus the Russian Federation. So, but it is reckless. It will lead us to nowhere, to the same hostile attitude towards each other. But hostility is not a kind of running nose to be treated and forget it about it, or running temperature. But it's will exist. It can exist for decades, and it's very difficult to come back to the previous period, which is much better than the period we have arrived at. So I don't know, because in the diplomatic community, there is always a fixed formula that any debate between the opposite numbers, it doesn't matter, prime ministers, between prime ministers or the head of states, the presidents, there should be favorable atmosphere for such negotiations, for such summits, meetings. But there is no favorable atmosphere at all. It's poisonous atmosphere. In the poisonous atmosphere, there will be mutual accusations. Mr. Biden will tell Mr. Putin, oh, you're not good guy. You have done a lot of bad breaks and bad mistakes. Well, Vladimir Putin definitely will reciprocate. No, it is you, Joseph, you have done a lot of mistakes. So what does it mean? It means that they will reach zero result of the discussion. Zero and they will waste time for nothing. So first of all, there should be a normal, constructive, business-like atmosphere precluding before the proposed summit actually takes place. And this kind of atmosphere should be carefully calibrated and nourished. I remember the talks when Mr. Nikolai Podgorny, the chairman of the Soviet presidium of our parliament, visited Kabul. And at that time, I was working at the Soviet embassy in Kabul in Afghanistan as interpreter. And I remember negotiations were conducted between the president of Afghanistan, Muhammad Daoud, you probably remember his good name, he was assassinated, sorry for that, and between Nikolai Viktorovich Gorny. And there was, during that time, there was a kind of contradictions between Pakistan and Afghanistan. There was a massive propaganda, radio propaganda from each side, accusing each other, etc., etc. And what Mr. Podgorny just told Mr. Muhammad Daoud, the president of Afghanistan. So if you want, sir, to ameliorate your relationship with your immediate neighbor, namely Pakistan, you should concentrate on improving atmosphere, favorable atmosphere that will help you to normalize your relationship. And Pakistan should do the same. It's a reciprocal way, just entering to each other's direction, a kind of compromise, a kind of understanding that without this, no results can be expected. So what we have to do, we have to come back to the situation that prevailed during this expulsion of diplomats, seizing diplomatic property, and accusing us of aggression. We never conducted any aggression. It is Kiev who is conducting still an internal aggression against Donbass, peaceful population. And we wrongly label it as a civil war. It's not a civil war. It's aggression of internal aggression of the Kiev regime against its legal territory called Donbass, because it's a part of Ukraine. It's not a part of the Russian Federation. It's a part of Ukraine, though just filled in with the freedom fighters and population who doesn't want to live inside the country, who is nourishing and protecting neo-Nazis everywhere, extreme nationalism. So we have to come back to zero in our relationship in terms of propaganda, in terms of hostile attitude involving diplomats, diplomatic property, just against the Nord Stream 2, etc., etc. Just cancel all economic, financial sanctions. Cancel all sanctions against individuals, against individual personalities. And then to identify several exact items we have to resolve. We have to resolve immediately this year, because 2022 probably could be too late for us. Immediately, this very year, 21, in the summertime or in autumn, it doesn't matter what kind of location we will choose for that kind of meeting, Helsinki or Vienna, Austria. But we have to do this, because to be unprepared for such summit, it's useless to spend a lot of time and a lot of money for sending the respective delegations of each other side, I mean the entourage, to our respective presidents, and hoping for the best. nothing will happen. It will not be the best solution. It will be a spoiled summit. That's why we are still waiting for a detailed agenda, for a detailed list of problems we have to tackle in the first place. As to climate protection, we have already exchanged our views. It's not necessary to debate it once again. As to Afghanistan, I don't know, but I will simply omit this issue as Afghan, because the United States of America are going to withdraw its forces from Afghanistan. So we have to leave the Afghan population to decide their own destiny by themselves without any foreign presence and foreign interference. Only commercial, industrialists, financial, banking people should stay there and help Afghans to rebuild what had been destroyed during so many decades of hostilities and mutual killings. But this summit between our two presidents should be very well prepared, and not with a small glimpse of hope that they will bring us to better understanding of each other, but a paramount glimpse of hope, a very strong lightning of hopes. So it means that we will survive and we will avoid this chance of the Third World War. Regis?
Well, Vladimir, I would like to end on a hopeful note. You and I have discussed on several shows the Russian position to all of this, and you articulate it so well. And if people can listen objectively to what President Putin repeatedly says, is basically the same thing you have said. We would like to have good relations with our partners, our colleagues, and our friends. We don't have to go over that anymore. But I think where we are today, Russia has made it clear it has no trust whatsoever in what is coming from Washington and coming from the EU and NATO. I don't think that's very hopeful. I think it's a good thing. In my opinion, finally, Russia has said, we're not playing this game anymore, and we definitely do not want war. But if Putin has made it clear, if we are attacked, we will respond immediately and overwhelmingly with our entire arsenal, and nobody will survive, and nobody wants that. Vladimir, I want to thank you again so much for coming on the show to articulate over and over again the hopes that Russia, the Russian Federation, the Russian government, the Russian people want to live in peace with America, with Europe, with the rest of the world. And it is not Russia who has been creating the lies, the false narrative, and the aggression against Russia and also China. And you and I both know what this is all about. It's about the end of an empire. It's a dying empire who realizes that it's over and is doing everything it can to try to cause China and Russia, its two biggest opponents, opposing a unilateral hegemonic role for the United States of America. It's not going to happen. And as we have said many times, in which I believe, will the neocons, or whatever you want to call them in Washington, realizing they've lost this epic battle for control and domination of the planet, take the whole world down with them in a nuclear Armageddon? We can only hope and pray that sanity prevails. Vladimir, thank you again so much.
Regis, my pleasure, and I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to you for your enthusiasm, for your dedication and commitment to debate this extremely important international, not bilateral only, but bilateral plus international issues, rank and file people everywhere in the world are dreaming day in, day out. And they would like to live in peace and tranquility, avoid any clashes and confrontations. Thank you very much, Regis. Take care.